talking about how, both you and I need help with grocery shopping because we both have autoimmune diseases, which means we're more susceptible to the more extreme dangers of this virus. Can you share a bit about, your autoimmune conditions and how that affects you in this time?
Sure. So I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 11, which was a really, really long time ago.
Mm,
And diabetes is an autoimmune disease. Your immune system attacks the cells that make insulin. And then
mm-hmm.
once you have an autoimmune disease, you know this too, you're more susceptible to getting, I guess once your immune system realizes that it had its way with one organ, it might attack another one. And
Mm-hmm.
so I also have a thyroid. My immune system had attacked my thyroid. So that one's pretty easy. You take a synthroid pill. It's not that difficult.
Mm,
It does affect your life. In terms of how you feel physically and tiredness and all of that, but
mm,
it's easier to manage. But diabetes is it kind of controls your your whole life sometimes. Um,
mm,
so you have to be careful. It's a metabolic. It affects your metabolism, I guess, is what I'm saying. So you have to, eat the right foods, get exercise. And so insulin is a hormone. You have to take it. So I actually wear an insulin pump, and so it's constantly giving me a little bit of insulin. You have to figure
mm,
out the right ratios. There's a lot involved, but after a while, like I said, I've had it for many years. It can be pretty well controlled through doctor's visits and uploading your pump information and just looking at trends and so on and so
mm-hmm.
forth. But one of the things that does change some of that control is things like anxiety.
Yeah.
Um, and so then, so blood sugars run high, and that's been happening to me. And then I'm trying to get more walking time in or whatever. It's more. I guess I'm thinking about it more than I might normally. Sometimes I can push it to the back burner. But
Mm-hmm.
another thing, so with autoimmune diseases, I guess this COVID um, virus can really mess with anybody's immune system and
Mm-hmm.
make the immune system go hyper crazy. And so when your immune system goes crazy in attacking your body, I think that's why um, they have been saying people with autoimmune diseases need to be more careful. And of course, that doesn't mean that if we were to get it, God wouldn't help us to recover from it.
Sure.
But it's just so unknown and so unpredictable, and so therefore it's scary. And I think through all of this, really, all of life feels more uncertain, and all of life feels more fragile. And
Mm-hmm.
I think in some ways I've really had to say to myself, is it really? Is it
Mm,
really more uncertain and more fragile?
mm,
I don't think it actually is. I think life is
mm,
really uncertain and fragile every day, but just
mm-hmm.
we have been able to not think of it in those terms because, for the most part, we make our plans, we do our thing. But now we've really seen in a different way that we are not able to control all the things that we thought that we were able
Mm,
to control. And um, so I think, yes, just the balance of all of those different things, trying to balance that, the managing, I guess maybe be a better word, um, managing the anxiety, managing just the different feelings and emotions that are happening much more frequently, I guess, or maybe more intensely
mm-hmm.
than in the past. So I wouldn't say that this whole situation has like exacerbated the diabetes, but it has made it a little bit different. Managing the blood sugars has been a little bit more difficult than usual, or um, and I think stress does that too. Sometimes, after a stressful situation, I would see that happening. So it's not out of the norm. It's
Mm,
just more visible right now.
yeah. Well, I guess the way that I relate to that is that it's kind of, for me, I kind of view it as walking this line of both wisdom and kind of also trusting that God
Mhm.
is still in control.
Mhm.
Like, I want to be wise in my actions, in the way I protect myself against this disease, but also knowing that, like, if I were to get it, I've done my best. I've been as wise as I can,
Mhm,
and the Lord's present. Um,
mhm, mhm.
so I guess that's how I kind of hear you talking about it.
Yeah, and I think yes, because I think it's, I mean, we don't want to be fatalistic and be like, oh, well, if I get it, I get it, and there's nothing I can do about it anyway.
Hmm.
So, but being realistic and saying,
Hmm.
there are things I can control. And right now, if it looks like me not going to the grocery store for weeks, then that is what that looks like, or not even going anywhere. I got in my car one day to drive over to school to pick up some things. And I was trying to think, when's the last time I got in my car? It had been like 2 weeks. And I thought
Hmm.
it was so nice to have the windows down and driving somewhere.
Yeah.
I thought, again, something I'm not usually thankful for, the ability to get in the car and go somewhere. But boy, I'm really thankful for that right now, just driving over to the school building. Um, so yeah, being cautious, but then like you said, also trusting and resting
Mm.
in the Lord and thinking, and even if the worst happens, God is still there with me. And I think I had to kind of come to that too. It's
Mm.
just the realization, like, God didn't promise that we would never have terrible things happen. God didn't promise that we would never suffer, but
Right.
he did promise that he would always be with us. And knowing some of the, I believe that God doesn't change, and I believe that his word is true, but then
Hmm.
really coming back around to that and being like, okay, so he is with me, and that is what gives me confidence and trust and rest through this
Hmm.
time.
Hmm.
It doesn't mean, as you said, that I won't get this disease. And certainly, Christian people have suffered through it. It's not like if you're a Christian, nothing bad ever happens to you. That's absolutely not the case. Um, and the Bible is very clear about that. And so, but the reassuring part of that is, no matter what we're suffering through, whether it is loneliness or illness or anxiety, in all of these things, he is right there with us. And
Hmm.
so, just knowing that, I think we do believe that, but then actually living like we believe. And I think that's part of the struggle for me too. Like, okay, so I trust and I rest and I'm being cautious, but does that negate the fact that I'm not going out? Does that mean that I'm living in fear? Um,
Mm.
so, and I mean, I would say we shouldn't live in fear, but then I think, but no, being careful is being wise, as you said, and
Yeah.
not living in fear. Yeah.
Well, there seems to be like a very unclear line between almost wisdom and fear, like where we could
Yeah.
be overcautious and fearful,
Hmm.
but you could also argue there's a degree to which some fear is almost humility. You're saying I maybe in the way that we rightly fear God,
Hmm.
we might rightly fear this disease and take the appropriate steps, but we don't want to overly fear
Hmm.
or inappropriately
Hmm.
fear.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I thought, yeah, I mean, I sometimes I have a lot of time to think, I guess, and so sometimes I think extremes, but I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll never leave my house again. I mean,
Well, I hope that's not true because that means I would never leave my house again.
yeah, 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 yeah. But I think too, like, okay, so there is anxiety now, but then I think, yeah, when things start opening back up, or when we go back to school, if it's in the fall, or I don't know when. Um, I mean, it looks like it probably won't be till the end of summer. But I think, yeah, that'll be an anxious time for me too when we do
Mm.
start to move about the country,
Hmm.
and facing it. Like right now, it's more controllable in that sense. And I mean, I can be obsessive too, even here in my own house. Like for a while, I was every time I would go for a walk, I would use a Clorox wipe on the doorknob before I came back in the house. And finally, I thought, seriously, nobody else has touched the
A
doorknob
doorknob, yeah.
since you went out. And so just like reminding myself, like, to step back.
Mm.
But yeah, then whenever we are, that'll be a different kind of anxiety. But
Mm.
and just realizing this is, it's going to be more long term, I think. um, and even, there's no guarantee that there will be a vaccine or immunity or anything like that. So I think on the one
Hmm.
hand, the things that we're thinking, oh, it'll be over when this happens, there's no guarantee that this will happen. But again, coming back to the thought, God is with us and will be with us, and he doesn't change, and he will be with us through all of that as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so, yeah, I think, like what I had said about managing the anxiety, I think there's just a lot of different things to be anxious about. And another thing about the anxiety, I think, is that I feel like we've all been anxious about different things at different times and different degrees. Some people I think suffer more from that. But I don't know that I've ever had like this amount of anxiety for this long of a period of time. Usually
Yeah.
you're worrying about an event or something that might happen, and then it does or it doesn't happen, and then eventually you move on. You don't think about it anymore. But this has just been a long time to be thinking about the same sorts of things.
Yeah. Yeah. It almost feels like even if it's not directly affecting us as individuals, it's collectively affecting the world.
Hmm.
And because we're part of that, we almost feel like a collective worry
Yeah,
about these things.
definitely. Yeah.